Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, Sue. Wow. Fun to do this again. So I want to share, I'm going to start with a little bit of cheerleading. We had a really awesome Bible study faith conversation last Monday. Now you can roll your eyes because I often start with this sort of phrase, but again, I want to share that I call it a faith conversation in as much as a Bible study because we always begin with a verse of scripture, in this case from Matthew this morning. But we're free to let it move where our thoughts and questions and our everyday life is taking us in everyday life. Which is to say, we're free to engage what God has us working on this week. And from there, we lay our cards out and share. And I probably think, admittedly, that this was a great conversation, a great Bible study, because I got to talk a lot. But here's the thing. We all asked very good questions. And we shared our experiences of living into those questions. That phrase I like to say, the messy middle of ministry that we all do. And likewise, I got to geek out a little bit on some constructive theology and how our embedded models of binary and hierarchical thinking influence our hermeneutics on Christology, theodicy, dualism, sanctification, predestination, and eschatological influences in Pauline pericopes. Use my big words. Anybody remember the first sermon I gave here? And I said I was going to share with you my most expensive sentence. Anyone remember that? You were all asleep, I know. It sounded something like that last little bit I said. And that was because I said, it's my most expensive sentence because I paid for every one of those words through seminary. And this got me thinking, as I wanted to share that again, of the story of the pepperoni pizza I share around Easter. Anyone remember that one? I'm going to spare you the story, but in the big picture, early on in my ministry, I'm trying to find creative ways to express an understanding of resurrection, and I had all of these great metaphors I wanted to use to share with the congregation, and I heard crickets. And people were glazed over. I'm thinking they're thinking about what they're going to make for dinner or putting together their shopping list. Anyway, in that time, there was one metaphor I came up with that I thought of involving frozen pizzas and pepperonis on frozen pizzas. And I thought, nah, that's way too silly. That's a ridiculous one to say. People will roll their eyes on it. And then guess what? I'm shaking hands afterwards, people going away saying, thank you for that pepperoni pizza metaphor. So since that day, my preaching and my teaching has changed. It's not about the big words, friends. It's about how we live it in our everyday lives. So what were we really talking about in the midst of all those big goofy words on Monday in the Bible study, the faith conversation? What we really were talking about was this. What do any of us, you or me or any of us, draw upon to come up with our best responses to life's varied circumstances, the things God provides, the things that come from the world around us? What do we draw upon in ourselves to come up with those responses? And this is what I want to tell you. Every engagement of your faith that we do, Sundays, other days, is an investment. It's a coin placed in that piggy bank of your faith. This was going to be my children's time with the piggy bank. Likewise, many, many other people, as you have lived and grown, have deposited coins in that piggy bank of your faith. Many people have influenced you. So in the spirit of the pepperoni pizza and of not saying words like eschatology or hermeneutic anymore, I want you to consider now these lived experiences that I had in my week. And I want you to consider them as if you and I were sharing a conversation, and I asked you, what would you do? Or better yet, what if I asked you for advice and I said, can you help me out? What should I do here? Think about your responses. We won't talk about them out loud, but I want you to think about how you would respond to these moments. So that's part one. Part two is I want you to consider where or how or from whom did you learn to have that type of response? So you'll have your instinctive response that you do in your life. Where did you learn that? Where were you taught that? So let's see what's in the piggy bank, friends. You ready? This week we had a neighbor dump a few old couches into the ravine off of Edward and 85th. A number of people in town saw him do it, told him he couldn't do it, he shouldn't do it, and he did it anyway. Some of you are rolling your eyes because you know this experience. Grr, frustrating. I'm going to make the first one a little easy and tease this out, okay? I feel frustration, and others who witnessed this felt frustration, and I think that's warranted, and I think that's fair to be angry and frustrated in a moment like that. We want him to be accountable. And here are some suggestions that I heard from others. Get the landlord involved and make the landlord pay so that the landlord knows the price for renting to people that don't seem to care about anything but themselves and don't care about this community. Then I had this one. What do you think about that one? Good idea? Then I heard this one. Why don't we get a truck? And when we know he's not there, we pick up those couches and we put them right back on his front porch, blocking his front door. Now that feels good, doesn't it? Then I heard this one. Well, ask him, does he need help to get rid of the couches? Does he have money to dispose of them properly? Maybe we can get together and pitch in and help him if he doesn't have the money to dispose of his couches properly. You see those three different responses. And the challenge here, in the spirit of the everyday practice of ministry that we do in our lives, which one of those felt the best for you? Or maybe a combination of all three? Which one is your best faith practice? And where did you learn? Where did this idea come from to say, I want to take those couches and put them right back on this porch? And why'd y'all laugh? Interesting, huh? That came from somewhere. Likewise, the person, I think we'd all agree that last one was the path we should take. Does he need help? How can we help him? Where did any of us learn that? Then this came, and I shared this with the Bible study, and I have to censor some of the words, so bear with me here, but this was a post from a friend of mine on Facebook. My friend writes, I'm seeing posts circulate about how we need to be prepared to reconcile with family, friends, neighbors post-election and work to heal the rift between us, as they are, after all, family, friends, and neighbors. It's a nice sentiment, but I would offer for your consideration an alternate course of action. Bleepity bleep those people. Our current politics didn't make your evil old grandmother spout that homophobic garbage at dinner 2 Thanksgivings ago. Our current politics didn't make your racist jerk uncle a racist jerk. Our current politics didn't make your Facebook pal from high school post all that garbage about how protesters are thugs and should be shot. The worst part of the past 4 years, to me, he writes, is finding out that many of our friends and family are indescribably, unpleasantly racist or sexist or just plain self-centered. People who have just been waiting for the opportunity to tell the world what they really think. None of these people acquired their horrible garbage opinions overnight. And he closes, if any of you need someone to absolve you of whatever residual guilt you have about cutting racist, sexist, homophobic pieces of human trash out of your life, I hereby absolve you. If your other friends, relatives, attempt to guilt you into reconciling with these terrible people, you have my permission to tell them where to go. Not the normal thing you hear from a pulpit in a church, right? What's your feeling? You don't have to say it out loud. The people we've seen that have hurt us, the people whose true nature has come out that we've witnessed, the anger, the division, the alienation. How would you respond? And likewise, who guided you? Who deposited those moral coins into your piggy bank that would instruct how you would respond? Then there was a friend I connected with recently, reconnected with. I hadn't talked to in a very long time, and I shared some personal stories, rather private stories, with a trusted friend. And it turns out that friend is also a friend with someone whom I did not want to know all of that private life and personal stories, and my friend knew this, yet still shared my secrets. How would you respond? What governed that response? Who taught you how to respond to that? And the last one, I'm talking to someone this week that's having a hard time, a lot of bad luck. And that person says, I tell you, God must hate me to give me all of this crapola in my life. I can't blame him, though. I haven't always been the best person. How would you respond? And who, what, or where taught you to respond that way? This is where the gospel ties in. We hear Jesus, we hear the phrase at the beginning of Matthew, the Pharisees plotted to entrap him. Friends, is anybody plotting to entrap you on the moral choices, challenges, or questions given to you? The challenge at this point was the division between what we would call church and state, looking to get Jesus into trouble. Now, we don't have that same one now, of course. But yet I was thinking, there are plenty of people in our country, in our culture, that want division, that thrive on division, that want people to be separated and angry, that want power over them. Because if you make people afraid and divided, they're not sharing in human harmony. They're not being a community together, and you can have power over them. That is in our midst, friends. So I'm here to tell you that your faith, to answer Jesus' question, the question challenged to Jesus, I'm here to tell you that your faith is in your politics. Your faith is in your politics because faith is a lived experience. The way I see it, the only way faith could not govern your choices in politics, your moral choices and your responses to these everyday activities that I just shared, the only way that couldn't do that is if your faith were merely a series of empty gestures reserved for a very small slice of Sunday between bacon for breakfast and beer with the Vikings. And you all know it's much more than that. If there is anything I could tell you, up here waving my arms, sharing in my clearest and most precise voice. I used to hear Walter Brueggemann, Old Testament scholar, very well known, when he was teaching in class and he really wanted to make a point, he'd stand up on the table and make his point. If I could stand, it's not right to stand on that table, but that's what I want to do now. Friends, your faith is to be lived in your everyday life. Your faith instructs both the instinctive responses you might have to those 4 little case studies I gave you today, the embedded ones you might respond with, and the deliberative ones. The times when we say, this is what I want to do, but what's the right thing to do? It's in your everyday life. It's in your every action, every reaction and choice that each and every one of us make. It is every coin that has been deposited in that piggy bank of your faith. This is why it's important. Because you have become who you are because others have given you an investment of their time, their wisdom, their moral foundation. It's come from family members, from friends, from churches. Imagine who is on that palette that colors that paint of your, or that canvas of yours. Who has deposited into your piggy bank of faith? And likewise, you do the same today, actively practicing your faith to others. I will never forget the times my parents taught me to do the right thing. I have a vivid memory. I'm about 7 years old, and my dad is on the highway outside of Chicago picking up a big piece of steel that fell off of a truck so that the next person won't hit it and get a flat tire. I was worried he was going to get hit, but I vividly remember that. That was a coin deposited in my piggy bank. I remember getting up and raking the neighbor's leaves because his wife just had a heart attack. What other ones can you remember? The people who taught you how to be good, how to be loving, how to be faithful. And here's the thing, friends. You are that person to someone else. You are a teacher in as much as a student. And we know and we've learned that faith is in every moment of our lives. Shall we live it? Peace be with you, friends. How did I do on timing up here? Usually I go longer. Good? No one's asleep? Let us sing, friends, number 130 in the hymnal. Friends, we come to a time where we share our sacrament of communion, and as is our tradition,